All right, I guess we'll just start then. Yeah. Hi everyone. Hope you are well on this incredibly warm Tuesday evening. My name is Fiona. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the host of What Am I Rolling? In case you're here and you're like, what on earth is going on? Because that's me most of the time anyway. Hope you're all doing very well. Yes, I've had a really good day so far. Been working from home. There was a bit of issues at work with basically no one being able to access their emails from the web client, which is quite fun. And I had my afternoon and evening plans cancelled completely separately out of my hands, and obviously can't go into too much detail because it's nothing to do with me per se. But so I thought, fuck it, I'll just do this again because I actually really enjoyed it last time. Had an hour and a half of me just chatting, well, what I would call bollocks on a quick start of RPGs. So yeah, if you're new here or if you're just like, what's going on? I do I run tabletop role playing games. I've been called by some people the Willy Wonka of tabletop role playing games. Bonkers. I definitely don't see myself as that. I just see myself as a woman who has way too much time on her hands, doesn't read everything, and so therefore is forcing herself to do. So that's what I thought today. I thought instead of like probably fobbing off the evening or just losing any sort of will to do anything because again it's so warm here in the UK just now. So it's been hitting about 28 to 30 degrees Celsius, which is God knows whatever in Fahrenheit, but it is just incredibly warm, and especially for me, who is incredibly pale, a stick thin woman. I don't do very well in the heat. I thought rather than waste an evening me just lounging around trying to do some reading and whatnot, I thought I would do it on. And I asked in the Discord, there's a Where and DMVC Discord that you can join in, and it's just a small group of us just chatting rubbish about RPGs and like people who actually listen to the show. I asked if I was going to do this, what RPG pick, and Brian, thank you so much, Brian, suggested two RPGs. Suggested the One Ring Second Edition from League and City of Mists, and the One Ring won because it is a lot shorter than City of Mists. I don't think anyone wants to do a whole 100-page review of Quick Start for that sort of thing, but both of them are excellent, excellent games. I highly recommend checking. So I'm going to have a bit of background to this before I show you the PDF, primarily because I actually have the physical copy of the starter set with me. I played one of the adventures a long, long time ago on a different stream where we definitely got the rules wrong. But also, because I'm one of those people, I bought the actual books, the sort of core book, which is this beautiful tome, quite thick as you can see, and then this sort of expansion one, which I thought was lots of adventures. It turns out not. The Ruins of the Lost Realm, that is more sort of locations, not. But I wanted to show you them anyway. Oh, I've also got, again, because I'm one of those people, got the GM screen for the One Ring, which is absolutely gorgeous. If you artwork on. Look at that. You can't see it because it's blue and black, but never mind. But all the information there, you that in a second. And also it comes with a little book from. And I wanted to show this a little bit first. I'll go into it in more detail with the starter kit itself. But the sort of books themselves, quite short, about 30 pages each from the starter set, and it's just really well contained artwork. And the work that's gone into the interior, like art, the interior art. No, that's not what it was. Just the interior art design, like all the little details. All the I don't know if you can quite see it. My face, it focus a little bit. You can sort of see the detailing of the outside of the pages as well. It's all very well, and actually the page itself is very textured. These particular paper ones, they don't have like a textured feel to them, but the actual books do. So let's look at the physical starter set before I move on to the actual rules. So that's the plan. I'm going to quickly go through the starter set itself, what you actually get in the physical one. You would also get in the PDF one, but obviously the PDF one, I mean, that's a bit boring and it's not very tactile as well. Before going on to the actual rules of it. So yeah, I've actually played one of the adventures from the starter set. And in the starter set, you have, I think, 5 adventures, and they're all set in the town, in Hobbiton, in the Shire. And it's this idea of building up those relationships, those characters, which are characters from the novels, and going off on adventures and stuff, and starting from there. So you can play. What's really cool about Lord of the Rings, the One Ring. I'm going to be doing that a lot as well, because obviously the One Ring is an original sort of like system, but it's come from other IPs, different companies. But yeah, One Ring Second Edition. That's what we're focusing on today. But the starter set itself, you can play any lineage essentially, but they focus on hobbits to start with. It's a nice, easy, gentle. So if I take off the lid first of all, nice big image. Hobbits on adventures, gotta love that. Inside, you get a number of things. First of all, you get 8 pre-generated character sheets with a nice, again, with characters from the novels. So there's good old Bilbo. All right drawings. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of them, but I know they're supposed to have a certain feel to it. Get a little bit of a bio, and then all the stuff you need on one sheet. And I know that sounds wild to have everything on one sheet. But I've played many RPGs that all have them on like 3 separate sheets about what you can do, what your virtues are, all that sort of thing. And it's sometimes quite hard to me. So the fact that it's on one sheet, and the Free League did this with other ones as well, like in Alien, they've got all these sort of flavor stuff on one side and text and all the important stuff on the other. That's all. Other things you get, naturally, big old maps. This one, I think it's Shire in beautiful story. Oh no, it's a this is from the Ruins one. My apologies. I put all the stuff in one book, as you can tell, or in one sort of place, as you can tell. I mean, look at the maps you can get. I mean, imagine having that at a table. It's just we can't see any of it because it is in the absolutely incredible, and it feels. But here's the one for the actual starter set. There's one on both sides. You've got the full map of Eredor. The thing is, the problem is with this one. It's massive. I need a better camera for it, essentially. And then on the other side, you have the Shire in a bit more of a close-up one. In again, really cool to have that at the time. The other thing with starter sets for Free League, you also get lovely item cards up to players with all the information back. I've put them in little card sleeves because I am, I'm dabbling in Magic the Gathering a little bit, and I'm just going to get card sleeves because I'm going to end up throwing them away or doing something. But yeah, simple enough, nice, good size, quite sturdy, etc. And obviously got a drawing on them. So what they are, in case you don't know. Yeah, there you go. The difference between a short spear and a normal spear. Trying to do 2 things at the same time. There you go. I didn't know there was a difference. Turns out. But yeah, so those are all the little cards and stuff. The other thing you get dice. So of course, the whole system uses a unique dice system, although I know there is the 5th edition version of the Lord of the Rings one coming out. I'll talk about that in a bit. But yes, this system uses D12s, the best dice in my opinion. D6s, a traditional dice in my. I'm just going to show you. So in most Free League games, you get like a specific custom set of dice. So for this, this is the D12, for example, and you'll notice obviously there's a little bit of hatching, and this is where oh, there we go. We're focusing, so you can see the hatching around each one's, etc. But so it goes up from numbers 1 to 10, and then this is where I'm going to get it wrong. So 11 and 12 have runes on them. The Gandalf rune, there you go. I believe that is the 12. I'm sure I'm going to find out in a second that it's the 11 instead. But apparently it's the greatest result you could ever get on a D12. It's like an automatic success. And then you have Sauron Eye. And that is the worst result you could ever get. And basically rolling that means you're basically rolling 0. And I'll come on to the actual mechanics when we get into the elf. You also get a similar sort of hatching and whatnot in the D6s as well. Now the D6s, I need to point this out here now, because I completely missed this when I had a read through before. So I have actually read through the starter set and the core rulebook before, because we were doing an episode of it on GM's Book Club, which will come out who knows when, in the near future, probably. And in these dice themselves, you can see, so it's marked 1 to 6, but on the 1, 2, and 3, will it focus? You see that it's the die is not, the ink is not filled in. And that's because there's certain effects that mean if you, I think if you're exhausted or something like that, then it doesn't count towards your goal. And then similarly on 4 and 5, they're filled in, but 6, there you go. You've got a little rune at the top there that indicates like a success or something like that, like special success. But again, I'll come into it. I'm basically going off memory now because I've not looked at the PDF since I was like, let's do this like 2 hours ago. Anything else in? Let me put the dice away because otherwise they'll be jangling all over my table. So let's look at the actual books you get in the stuff. Oh, I just threw all of it on the floor. How typical. Okay, so well, here's the other thing. So you also have, along with the cards, with the dice, pre-gen sheets, you also have these little, what I mistook initially as little coasters, but they're actually sort of guidance, like tips for players when you're doing traveling. This is a traveling one. There are all the moves you can do, and then if you're in combat, here are all the combat things you can do. And the idea is that when you're at the table, you can move it around to show whatever one you're doing, essentially. I assume it is the roll that's facing out. It's the move or whatever's facing out. So if I put this one here, it will be open is the one I'm choosing, I assume. But it's to remind you what you're doing with that. And I think these are really cool, actually, because as we'll get into it, combat is pretty difficult. I think it's quite difficult itself. I think the idea of it is obviously just don't get into combat. If you do, bad things are going to happen. And I'll come on to the traveling stuff as well. So there's kind of like 3 phases of it. There's like the main role play, traveling, and combat. And they have different sort of rule systems for each one. And it's very, what I like about it, and I'll get into more detail about it, is that no one's ever like not doing anything. It's, you always have a role to play, and you'll always be decent at it. Like, that is your chosen thing. If you're the fighter, you're going to be upfront doing stuff. If you're the scout, you're going to be doing that. You know, it feels like worthwhile, and it feels almost quite heroic in a way. So I just thought that was quite cool. And these are good. Again, not so much. I don't know how helpful these are online. I'll be honest. I definitely would use it if I was playing online as something for me to have to reference it, because sometimes I'll forget. And that's something I think a bit of a criticism of free is that quite a lot of the stuff that you sometimes have to do for combat, especially, relies on, for example, cards. So one of the things in Alien and in Blade Runners, I think, I can't remember exactly. There's definitely initiative cards. Walking Dead, I think it has it as well, where you get a cards from 1 to 10, shuffle, you take a card, and that is your order in the initiative, going from 1 to 10. And anything with card initiative, I know this, I know you can do it online. I'm not an idiot. It's just not the same. So, and it can be a little bit difficult if you are not au fait with any sort of like VTT, if you're using one of those, or if you're using one of these card websites, which you can do it. You just need a little bit of force. But if you're a GM like me who just is running on fumes, you don't have time to maybe get all the nuances of physical play and streamlining it to online play. And maybe that is something that we should consider. Like, maybe we should be building RPG design geared towards online play, and certainly maybe for streaming stuff as well. Like, again, I'll come into it when we sort of get through. But here are the 3 books you get with the starter set. So they all have this very nice design, similar to that Rivendell one. You get the classic ring and Sauron's eye. Very beautiful. I love the colours on these. They're really sort of beautiful. So in the starter set, you get 3 of them. You get the rules in a nice thin one. They're about 28 pages, 20, 30 pages. And then you've got a little book about the Shire, which is all the lore and stuff. Illustration. Beautiful. These you like, they have actual. This is where I'm sure they do now. So you got the Shire book, and you also got the little adventure book, as well, which again sets you up quite nicely in terms. Like I said, all the adventures are about. They're sort of under this idea of the conspiracy of the Red Book. I think that is the name of this essentially, and all of them are interlinked, so you can play through all of them. You can play through one of them, maybe in and out of order. It does recommend you play them with the pre-generated characters. So like with Bilbo, with Balin, the Brandy books, all that sort of thing. Sort of fits in with the setting. There is no rules for character creation in the starter set, so it makes sense that you would get you right. But yeah, so I'm gonna turn over to the PDF. There you go. I realized what happened last time, that I can zoom in and make it so that my big old head isn't hiding stuff. It's because I got rid of this. This. So weird. You can't even see my. Oh, there you can. Sorry, words. This old tool tab, I got rid of it, and it mucks up the layout. So let's go through it. As you can see, it's 28 pages long, and it's very simple and straightforward from the cover, so it's kind of like easy to read as well. One of the things I kind of wished with this book before going into it, I wish that RPG books. I appreciate obviously the whole point of like getting like this is coming from someone who's got the physical books now, right? I kind of wish that we wouldn't the art. I wish there was more. How can I put this? Just text. Now sometimes when you're like, okay, you've chosen the font for style over substance, and I can't read what you're putting down, and that's maybe again because I'm an old person and rubbish. But yeah, there's definitely some ones where you're like, oh, they've written a letter to indicate flavor. Oh, but it's in it's in handwriting font, and it actually puts me off quite a bit. I definitely have a sort of relationship of like, point of view, like, does that immerse me in more? It depends on how it's written and if it gets the information across. If it's just flavor, it's okay, but I'm just like, this book could be instantly shorter for me. Let's dive in. So the second page is schedule. There's the credits. Nice to see writers and stuff. Credit at the beginning. Even playtesters. Fun. I will zoom in. Do not worry. What else? Realize I've just lost the chat, so that's probably nope. That's fine. Yeah. So first of all, you get the first 2 pages. 4 pages. Yeah, we've got a letter from Bilbo. My dearest Balin, almost 6 years have passed already since the last time you were here. I remember it very well. Everything you and Gandalf said when we met. You were alarmed, and I took you. Don't think you would find it. I'm gonna have to zoom in even more. I don't wish to edit the document. Thank you. I don't think you would find it surprising to know that this news of a nameless threat is hard in the Old Shire. Gandalf came to me again on several occasions. He seems to care about our friendship and says that I should be. But his vague words of warning make even less of a dent in the general sense of peace and protection that we enjoy here away in the northwest. So yeah, so the One Ring second edition takes place between the novels of The Hobbit and the sort of, I think, about 100 years or so till the beginning of Lord of the Rings. So that's where all stories and adventures for this particular system take place in. But don't think that I am completely clueless. All I need is to have a look at the things I've collected in my adventures. Remember that there is a wide and dangerous world out there. Sometimes I even miss it. The road, the thrill, narrow escape. It's my tookish side. But then I look at my beautiful garden, my snapdragon. Trailing gnats, it's probably a flower. How they glow, red and golden, beautiful than any dragon horde that ever was, and I am back to being a Baggins. I hope what I say won't be too much of a disappointment to you. You haven't asked yet, but know that if you mean to invite me to join you in that Moria adventure you're always talking about, I'm afraid I have spent enough time crawling in the dark under the mist not to wish to do that ever again. But there is a good bunch of eager lads and lasses here that you might find liking. Why, they are just waiting for no more than a nod in their direction from me or from our grey friend to go off into the blue on mad adventures. Theirs is an age that is more appropriate than that to that type of business. Believe me, I have taught them a thing or two. Expect that. Yeah, so that's sort of the introduction to the adventure. I can imagine again reading that out to the players as sort of almost like a cinematic piece. One thing I'm on the fence about, but I don't understand why people put it into their RPGs. It's an example of how play works and like what is a role playing session. I saw a comment on Die the RPG where the writers have put in like usually there's a sort of page where it goes like what is an RPG, what is a role playing game, and usually you get long answers about what it is and like what it means because it's tailoring to people who have just picked up this book out of interest for the first time. And in the Die RPG, bless them, I think Grant and Kieran, the sort of two lead writers on that, they'd written type actual play RPG into YouTube, watch one. That is a role playing game. And I get it. It's the comment of like, it's obvious what it is. But I don't think it is necessarily. I think, some people role playing is something that's kept into, I don't know, other parts of the house rather than like rolling it in front of friends and stuff. I think there's a big crossover now with LARPing for sure, certainly with Die, the RPG. Um, and for something like this with Lord of the Rings, because I think it's targeting two audiences per se. It's targeting it's targeting Lord of the Rings, Hobbits fans, Tolkien fans in general who have read the books and would like to play in a game that is inspired by those novels, but also people who role play and maybe want to try different systems, but also go for a world which is familiar to them because we've got it in TV and books. Obviously, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the whole setting of Middle Earth has really inspired so many fantasy writers over the years. So it makes sense that these two of people who've come from the books or haven't played role playing games, but people who have played role playing games but want to do a different kind of fantasy to that of D&D. Really makes sense. So here on the next couple of pages we have the examples of about the going through like what these heroes do. So that's what they call, the players are called player heroes in this. The GM's called the lore master. I quite like. And so so it just talks through an example of how play might happen. I think you and I are experts here, friend. Here we go. So it talks about so this is what I was saying before. It's sort of the where we're placing the story, the timeline, as it were. So you see it there, the twilight of the Third Age is set in the period narrated in The Hobbit, to those taught in Lord of the Rings, encompassing more than 6 decades. That's interesting. Short amount of time. So I like the idea that you could make a whole campaign span over a couple of years, maybe change a few characters. Again, in the full rulebook, there's this idea of one of the downtime activities that you could get like not hire, create an heir, essentially. Like you could choose an heir rather than create, and so you could bring up this person and then switch to that character should your own character be unable to take an adventure. Quite interesting. So yeah, players of the One Ring create a company of heroes. Again, company over party, like that. Hobbits, dwarves, elves, and men seeking adventure in the lowlands of. This is where, by the way, I appreciate my pronunciations of these places are going to be absolutely rubbish. Because, fun fact, I watched the films, tried to read the books. I read The Hobbit, and that was kind of it. Got bored with the Lord of the Rings, and the other books didn't really interest me, which I know is like scandalous and or horrible, but there you go. So, all good enough. So yeah, the premise of the One Ring is that based on these extraordinary works of fiction, introduce readers to his greatest creation of Middle Earth, a past. There's one thing which I bet is going to come up on the next page, is that in the core rulebook it talked about, well, what do you do? Like, what if you use a character from the books? That's not what that person ends up doing in the books. Like, what if Aragorn turns up, but Aragorn doesn't appear in this timeline for another 20 years? So how can he exist here and with my characters? And had a really interesting answer by saying, like, imagine if all your stories that you ever told had this element of like could be true. So it was like sort of coming from like an unreliable narrator's storyline. And I thought that was such a cool idea. The idea that this whole canon, it's just folk tales and just stories that people are telling at a festival, like if over dinner, the whole Great Uncle Bill will tell us how you know, got to the Misty Mountains and defeated Smaug the dragon, and it's unreliable in that way. And I quite liked it because then it meant like it kind of easily says, well, it doesn't matter what the canon is, what you choose. Similarly, I know D&D also does a similar thing where they sort of say like all worlds of Faerun are canon, all worlds of Waterdeep, Baldur's Gate, they are canon. Everything you do in them is true, and it's to alleviate that pressure off GMs to make things canon for everyone. Because there's always someone who goes, there will actually be. Well, actually, that's not what happened. But I quite liked how the One Ring dealt with that. Like, just they're all unreliable narrators. Gandalf can turn up whenever he wants. Tom Bombadil, he can turn up whenever he wants. In the Shire. So yes, here we go. So the Shire has been a gateway to Earth, both quest for Erebor, told in The Hobbit, and that to Mount Doom, told in Lord of the Rings. Start here with Bilbo and Frodo providing the readers with the first person. In the same way, the starter set describes the Shire as an introductory, less dangerous setting for new, and in brackets, maybe younger players of the world. Interesting. Again, would it be something that I would introduce you to? I think I would. Like, certainly this particular setting is designed for that. It feels very... Sorry, it's this setting. This starter set is designed for that. I also wonder if Free League would ever put out any other particular adventure stuff. I know they've announced another book very recently. I can't remember off the top of my head if it is an adventure book for the One Ring. But I think 5 adventures is great, but then would there be any more? Would there be market for any more? Yeah, the rules contain everything you need to quickly set up a game and play the scenarios presented in adventures using the pre-generated characters in the box. Player heroes. Each player takes on the role of a player hero, a fictional character whose attributes are inspired by those protagonists of the stories of J.R.R. Tolkien. Enter Middle Earth. Players must simply step into the character's shoes, trying to think as they would and react as they would react. The game of make-believe, story in the making, created in collaboration with... The lore master does not take the role of a single character. Instead, the player in charge of describing the setting and managing what would happen to the player heroes when they interact with them. They are the ears and eyes of the player heroes, in charge of describing locale, where the action is taking place, and playing the parts of people they meet, to fairly adjudicate the outcomes. To do so, the lore master interprets and reinvents Middle Earth as a setting for the player. The ultimate goal for the lore master is to provide the premise for creating a new epic focused entirely around the deeds. And here is an earlier one, actually. I think it's in the Candela Obscura. I can't remember how early their sort of their trigger warnings, safety tools brought up. But yeah, quite early on, the aim of the One Ring is to let players feel what it means to go adventuring in a wild and perilous land from the forgotten past. It is a threatening world, has more in common with the world depicted in epic sagas or the dark ages of Europe than our contemporary world. I 100% agree with this, by the way. I think when we get into the later rules about combat and scouting and the amount of work that goes into it, it feels very much like this is dangerous. I think sometimes if we'd come to it from a D&D's perspective or from a Sword Coast or a Forgotten Realms perspective, maybe there's a bit more of a nostalgic view or maybe a soft focus on it a little bit, like, combat is dangerous and all that sort of thing. But here, like, everything matters. Like the fact you get completely lost. Get those bottom of the starter set. In fact, you get stuff like this, the cards, to remind you what you can do, and each one of these stances or maneuvers has an effect on combat. Yeah, it's pretty brutal. So it totally makes sense that maybe, I guess, certainly if you've read The Hobbit, which is meant for a younger audience anyway, it kind of misses stuff out, perhaps. I don't know what the words are, to be honest with you, but yeah, it's good to talk about it as like it's not the happy-go-lucky setting that maybe people do think it is, perhaps, or this, it's not. I guess it's like what I'm trying to say is that epics in films always show like the highest and the lowest, and maybe not so much in between. And I think this particular setting, there's definitely a lot more in between, a lot more versatility, perhaps, or more volatile, perhaps. Players are invited to leave the age of information and fast travel behind and adopt a point of view of individuals whose horizons didn't extend further than a few miles from their birthplace. The landscape is revealed by this perspective is a world of uncertain boundaries and only vague hints of distant realms, and the folks who inhabit them. A place for these very reasons offers plenty opportunities for exploration. All right, structure of game. Story building is a fundamental component of the One Ring. It isn't about hearing a story being told or about creating it, but it's about creating it over the course of the game. Session of play is played as a series of scenes connected sequentially in a wider narrative arc. A scene is a single episode focusing on the company or a part of it facing some kind of challenge, preparing for one, or recovering. Frame a scene. The master needs to first describe location where the action is taken. Okay, so this is where it goes to the usual sort of like, how do we run a game? Actually, so yeah, you set the lore master or the GM will set up the scene, and then give options to the player heroes to do something, and then it's up to the player heroes to solve whatever crisis it is or whatever challenge that they have to face. And I guess then, if there's rolls to be had, that's when you use the dice. Then we've got action resolution. So this is the actual game mechanic bit. Game session takes the form of a continuous conversation between the lore master and the players. There are no turns, but the dialogue alternates between the lore master and the players who collaborate on bringing to life a series of scenes. The player heroes are protagonists, so you always be a fan of your player heroes because they are the protagonists in your world. They are the focus of your story, no matter. Even if there is something bigger happening in the background, that's happening in the background. You've got to pull the story to the front. Okay. So, when to roll? So I'm going to get nice out of this. So the lore master should only ask for. Oh yes, I remember this now. Oh, it gets to a point where there's a lot of setup. I remember when I was reading this before. Like, when should you ask for a roll? And it's interesting. I think it comes down to the GM and the players' relationship. I know a lot of players will ask for rolls. Like, can I do an insight check? Can I do a perception check, etc.? I've got to the point now where if they ask me a question that doesn't involve like a specific skill, I'll ask them what skill do they think it would require and work with it like that. But anyone who asks me directly for a skill, I'll be like, let's phrase it. What were you trying to find out? Because I feel like it breaks immersion a little bit on that front. It feels a bit, when we're playing a game, it's tricky because obviously you're looking down at your sheet going, what can I do? And then you're just taking that and then you're taking whatever on the sheet and then just putting it out to the people rather than having a think about it. And it's also tricky because sometimes you're playing characters which are basically yourself, but with different hair and different eyes and stuff. Different names and stuff. But yeah, so here it advises when to roll. So you should roll when the goal or action falls into 3 of the following circumstances. So when there's danger, when there's knowledge to be obtained, and when there's manipulation. You're trying to influence one or more uncooperative characters. And it talks about what to do, if not. So if they don't risk anything by failing, don't roll. If the knowledge is obvious, so it's not secret or hidden, don't roll. And if the heroes are asking our lore master characters something that's coherent, don't roll. I mean, a lot of the time, I would say that one's very very rare. So I have to be like, what are you asking of this character? Just look. Very basic sort of yes and thing happening there. And scenes in brief. So yeah, that's definitely sort of knowledge for first time GMs, perhaps, how do you run a game? And I guess it's the same as when you're putting together a board, right? You're putting together a you read the rules, but sometimes it's very difficult to comprehend what goes next or what happens unless you run it through. So having something like this, the scenes and briefings, where it goes, how do you do a scene in a role-playing game? What what the steps? If you've never done it before, it's maybe not as natural as I think it is. Because I've been doing this for about 5 years now, which isn't a long time. I mean, I saw a Twitter account. When was it? Yesterday, the day before. That followed one of my accounts, and of course I always read the bios because I'm always interested, why is this person followed little old me doing stuff? And they said, I've been playing since '93, and I've clocked over 20,000 hours playing role-playing games. And I was like, God, that person does not sound fun to play a game with. I really hate that. I really hate I don't like stats. I don't like people giving stats out. Like what I said it before at the beginning of this. I've played, I think, off the top of my head, over 50 different systems for the podcast. Obviously, either ran it myself or got somebody in to run it. But I don't use it as a badge of honor per se. It's very impressive, and I do keep a tally because it's just helpful to know that have I actually played this game? Is it something that interests me to put on the podcast? But anyone that does sort of that, it does feel a bit of a show off. I was just also 20,000 hours, I don't know. We have it in improv as well. They go, I've been practicing for this many years, and when I do a bit of teaching, obviously I ask why they come to this class, and everyone always says, I've been doing improv for this long, and I was like, I didn't ask. I didn't ask how long you've been doing improv. I asked why did you take this class? So it's always interesting. I think that's just ingrained into us that we have to say what our experience level is with role-playing games or with improv or with anything like hobbies to maybe prove ourselves that, we do know a bit what's going on and stuff. I get to that point now where I'm just no matter what's going on, I try and be I'm desperately trying to unlearn some bad habits I've got from just assuming that I know what's going on. So certainly with role-playing games, I try and dial it back and go, okay, don't judge it. If I was a new person, how would I come to this? I mean, I've already made fun of this this game already because of the play of example. But yes, so specialized dice. We've got 6-sided dice called success dice in this game, and then we have the best dice, 12, with the 2 special icons, and these are called feat dice. So we've got the feat dice, and we've got the success dice. So making rolls. Once the necessity for a roll has been established, it must be determined who is making the roll and which ability is appropriate for the action. The who rolls, well, obviously the person who's doing the action, essentially, which makes sense. And which ability? So we have, I'm going to get out one of the character, the pre-gens. I'm not going to use Bilbo, as frankly, the best person person I played in starter was Lobelia Baggins, or Lobelia. There she is, Lobelia Bracegirdle. What a name! Like you can't see, but great image. She's brilliant as well. I think she's got a great got a great personality. But imagine being called that. Oh yeah, because I remember, in this one, in the one shot, basically all of us were sort of connected in some way, whether we're sort of related to Bilbo Baggins in some way. It says here, Lobelia has yet to marry Otho Sackville Baggins. She's about 40 years old and has already seen her ambition to enter Bag End as the rightful owner disappeared once when Bilbo returned from his adventure against all odds. So already you've got like a really interesting character. And poor Otho wasn't played by anyone, but man, he he felt the full force of Lobelia on that front. But yeah, let's look at the skills. The skill rolls are the most typed. There are 18 skills in this game, and I'll go into them in a bit more detail there, but they are split up by sort of these attributes: strength, heart, and wits. So that's usually a majority of the game you'll be doing is these skill roll checks. You also have combat rolls, which is going to be slightly different, which in a second. So, once you've determined the correct ability, proceed to make the roll employing the numerical rating, the abilities ranging from. So, actually, you know what? I actually have this up here. I don't know why I did not do this. So say, so this is Lobelia's sheet that I prepared earlier. So, as you can see, here are the sort of the three attributes, or the three sort of like main core characteristics, so strength, heart, wits. And then here are the 18 skills that are split up to these attributes. I'm going into more details about it. But say I was... I'm just trying to think, what would be a good one? Let's say awareness. I'm trying to be a bit more aware of what is going on around me. Trying to figure out, if I'm playing Lobelia, I'm trying to find something in Bag End to, I don't know, some evidence against Bilbo in some way. You would also, I mean, again, maybe scan would be a better one as well. So a lot of these skills depends on what you're doing in the context as well. So maybe there'll be a bit of discussion about that. So anyway, I have 2 dots in awareness. So if I go back to the start of things, so it says I need to roll 1 feat die, so that's the d12, and then plus a number of success die equal to the rating of the appropriate ability. So that will be 2 on that one. So I roll 1d12 and 2d6. And then I have to, so I'll do that now. Why not? Oh my goodness, I got a Gandalf rune. That's an automatic success, but we'll come back to that in a second. So I've got a Gandalf rune, and I've got a 1 and a 3. So add up all the numerical results on the die, compare it to the target number associated with the rolled ability. If I go back here, so awareness is related to this target number, so TN here. So it's got to get over 16 to succeed on this task. Yeah, so rolled equal to or greater than the number, the roll is a success. Otherwise, it has failed. I can also have 1 attempt to push the roll, whether I succeed or failed. The action can be attempted again, but I've got to use a different ability. So say, for example, I rolled incredibly poorly. I rolled 3 ones, essentially. Nowhere near the 16. I can roll again, but maybe I need to use a different thing. So maybe I'm like, okay, I search, I can't find anything, but maybe if I think, if I was Bilbo, where would I hide the scroll case? Where would I hide this? And maybe a bit of insight, perhaps? Maybe a bit of riddle, perhaps? Because that is about... No, riddle is about deception, I seem to remember. But yeah, you have to justify why you'd use another skill, which I quite like as well. But a player hero who is given a second chance must always cope with the consequences of having failed that first time. So every failure, you move the story forward in some respect, but there's always some reason for it. You know, you don't forget about it. You can't just have a go twice if you see. So here's how to read the feat die. So each feat die, as we know, shows numbers between 1 and 10. And there's a special Gandalf rune, which is that symbol there, and the Eye of Sauron, which is that symbol. So the Gandalf rune, which I did roll, is the greatest result you can ever get on a feat die. So I assume that is a 12. The action succeeds regardless of whether the total result is enough to match or beat. However, and the Eye of Sauron which again I would assume is an 11, is considered to be the worst possible roll on the feat dice. When the feat dice shows an Eye of Sauron, the result counts as 0. So for sake of argument, instead of rolling a Gandalf rune, which meant I succeeded at that anyway, imagine I rolled a 10. So I would have actually failed that roll. I would have only had 14 in total, and to get and the TN, the target number, would have been a 6. I have to roll pretty high to get that, to beat that thing. Here we go. So success dice. So the D6s, customized to show 1, 2, and 3 in outline, which I showed before, and then 4, 5, and 6 in solid color. In addition, the success icon, the Elvish numeral 1, so that little T rune, appears along with the number 6. And again, it tells it. Yeah, any T icons rolled indicates a superior result on a success. And then it says, see degrees of success over. Already, I can tell. It's one of those things you go, okay, there's already a lot of stuff happening there. But if in doubt, it's always a D12 and a number of D6s, and hopefully get over a certain number depending on that. Call it an ability, or did it call it? What did it call it for? It called it target number associated with the rolled ability. So yeah, the target number. Attributes. Attribute target number. Strength, art, and wits. It's equal to 20 minus a corresponding attribute score. I think it's slightly different in the starter set. I need to remember. Yeah, so it's from 18 actually. Yes, because these add up to 80. So you see, here's the score at the top here. If you add them together, that's 18. Should be, and I think in the actual core thing, it should be 20, but they've made it a little bit lower in the starter set to make it easier. I think I seem to remember that from last time. And my phone keeps going off. Oh, nothing of interest. It's just like someone's messaging me saying, you got to do this thing. I was like, I'm busy. All right, here we go. The degrees of success. So a roll result that achieves the target number or results in a Gandalf rune produces. Wait, hang on. Roll result that achieves the target number, or you get the Gandalf rune, and produces one or more of the Elvish icons on the outline. Is superior quality. So on this roll, so the original one was Gandalf rune, and then 4, no things. So if there's no icon scored, it was just successful, but it didn't achieve anything beyond the bare minimum. So it's just a success. If a single success, single sort of little Elvish T scored, then the player heroes was out of the ordinary. So a great success. And then 2 or more means absolutely exceptional and memorable. Exceptional and memorable. Imagine if it wasn't memorable. It's just, that was very good. Right, now what? Okay, so that's the first thing. Okay, the degrees of success. So once you've done that, there's that. The degrees of success. And then we go on to the modifiers. And this is where, again, I was a bit like, oh, okay, let's go for it. So the following are a number of variations upon the core rules of the game. These represent advantages and drawbacks that affect the player heroes. So, favoured rolls. A favoured roll happens when a player hero possesses special affinity for tasks. When you make a favoured roll, players roll 2 of those feat dice, so those D12s, instead of 1, keeping the best results. Now, I believe, typical sorts of favoured rolls are players' favourite skills. But I think, you need to remember, it's stuff like this. So if you've got a little dot next to on the left-hand side of the skill, that is a favoured roll. So if I'd rolled an Or, I'd have to roll 2d12 and 2d6 against 16. And take the highest one, I believe. I rolled a 7, 8, 2, and a 3. That's only a 12, so I still failed. God, poor Lobelia is not doing very well at these. Yeah, that's right. Keeping the best roll. Yeah, I don't know why I doubted myself there for a second. Ill-favoured rolls, these are the opposite. So you'd roll the same thing again, 2 feat dice instead of 1, and keep the worst result of the 2. and sources of ill-favored rolls are indicated on the included adventures. So that is more of a GM thing. That is more of like you deciding what the environment is or the setting. If there's something that would go against these characters rather than the other way around, if you see. That's again. So that's like advantage, disadvantage for the D12s. Then you have bonus success dice, so those D6s. So it's impossible to achieve something in the sense of like you maybe get some more, if you're, I don't know, maybe you're just very good at hiding. Maybe you're employing some sort of beneficial talent or something like that. In that case, you might get a few more D6s instead. I'm sure that's going to give it as an example. Yeah, the indicated next to text gaining 1d or more, meaning you add a success dice to that pool. What does it say up here? Again, all these little boxes are very useful because they always say stuff after I've already sort of explained it. So yeah, this is an example of like favoured versus ill-favoured. So your roll could be both favoured and ill-favoured. It just means they cancel out that sort of advantage, disadvantage, even though if you have multiple sources making it favoured over one source that make it ill, vice versa. I mean, yeah, it's again, I would just be like, as long as you're honest with the players about what that means, I think it's fine. It's a complicated game as it is. You don't want to make it even. What else do we? Okay, hope bonus. Now hope is on here. It's under heart. This this sort of pool here is 16. Hope is a pool of points representing the reserve of spiritual vigor that the heroes draw from when confronted by odds or difficult odds, or when a particular good result is required by a circumstance. So you could spend 1 hope point to gain a D. It's spent on any dice making a roll by a player, but it's not possible to spend multiple hope points to gain multiple. You can only do it once per attempt, so to speak. This is the thing, and maybe it's not very obvious, folks. Maybe let me show you a different character sheet as well. So this is Lobelia's different target numbers for her different abilities, right? But if I go to the one beneath, which is that is still if I go to Paladin Took, the second, you see actually their target numbers are different. So I quite liked it. You could be rolling for the same thing. So like say for example you're trying to shut the door to stop the enemy getting in. And say you're both using athletics. For some people, it will be easier to get that target number than others, even though you're doing the same roll. So it rather than you, the GM, setting a particular like difficulty, like, oh, you have to get over DC 15 for it, it's up to the player to pass their own check, if you see what I mean. And I like that. Takes the pressure off, absolutely, and it's all about, and means then you're learning your character sheet or what you're good at, rather than like, I did a bad roll, and it's some arbitrary DC, rather than like, the DC for me for all of these skills is, say, strength. For any skill that's associated with strength, for Paladin, it's always going to be 50. So I quite like that. I don't know any other system that does that. I'm sure quite a lot of it. But it's the individual's own target difficulty or target number has. Anyway, sorry, that was just an aside. So after hope points, we also have inspiration. So certain circumstances may result in a player hero becoming temporarily inspired. Inspired players double the benefit of spending a hope point. So if you're going to spend 1 hope point from your pool, you get 2. Again, I could already tell in my head, I was like, there's a lot of admin to come. But these are all just straightforward. And it says like favoured rolls and ill-favoured rolls, that makes sense. Bonus dice, again, I think you just judge your things. The hope, again, it feels like another tactic, because I guess hope is such a big theme in the Lord of the Rings, well, in Middle-earth in general. So it makes sense that, in the dark there is hope, and I'm going to spend my reserve. You also have it with luck points in Call, like you spend luck to make, to gain an advantage, or to make that check. So here it makes sense that you would spend your own perception of luck, perception of hope, sorry. And penalty success dice. So this is the opposite. So we've got bonus success dice, which we just talked about, along with other ways to gain additional like helping D6s. Then you have penalty ones, which is the the opposite. They take dice away, so you'd lose a d6 from one of the sources. And the same thing here as well. They're cumulative. Oh, I'm sorry, I misread that. So yeah, so I guess you add up and subtract, and then whatever that final result is that's what you add to your. That's interesting. So for example, if a player gains 1d6 from one source and then gains 2d6 from another and loses from a penalty, they gain a 2d6 at the end. Enough. All right, that's all you need to know about the rolling stuff specifically. Except you don't. There's also these things called conditions, and this is where I kind of had my head in my hands at this point because I was like, okay, let's read it. So conditions are recorded on the character sheet by ticking the box, which is... Oh, hang on. Move over here. I forgot that you got the images and stuff there. But there you go. There's only 2 conditions. There's wary and wounded. But wary. The resistance of the player heroes is represented in the game by their endurance score. You can see... here we go. So the endurance score of Lobelia here is 22. Heroes can lose endurance in many ways, and when their endurance drops to a level equal to or lower than their load score, they become wary. Find the load score. I guess it's here. That's where it would normally be, but it's not included on this one. Presumably because obviously you'd write it down. And yeah, that's where your current endurance. You'd work it out in some way. I'm sure it's about to tell us off the top of my head. Let's see. So when a weary hero makes a roll, all the success die that comes up in the outlined 1, 2, or 3. So remember from before, 1, 2, 1, 2, 4, 3. Should know how to do that. It's considered a result of 0 instead. So that's quite painful, actually. Really, like, that's quite significant in that sort of sense. That you just have half these number values just wiped off instantly. You're tired. Wounded. So the other condition you get is wounded. So serious injuries can cause a hero to become wounded, while losing and recovering endurance is an everyday occurrence. Being wounded is a more serious predicament for adventurers. Will affect them for longer. Wounded heroes who remain active risk being knocked out of combat and recover lost endurance points more slowly. So currently, again, I know there's more to it when you get to the combat. Actually, the thing is, I don't remember. We're about 13 pages through the rules so far. I suspect the combat stuff actually isn't in this one. I don't think there's too much in terms of combat, because, or at least it should. It definitely tells you. It probably doesn't tell you much about the traveling that later. Anyway, if the last 10 minutes you're like, what the fuck is she talking about? Here's just a die result table. Easy enough. So, on the feat one, so the D12, and then what to do on the D6, and what to do if there's a special condition. So I would actually, if I was running this, I think I would have this out, maybe print this specific thing and give it out to all the players, along with that little combat poster, I like to call it. And then, so if that wasn't enough, here's a detailed die roll procedure about how you do stuff. So all that stuff I had before, the idea of like, define what the player's doing, get an ability for that roll, take the feat die and the number of d6s equal to that rating, spend a hope point then and there. If they're inspired, they get 2d6 rather than 1 per point. You can only use 1 point on a roll. Gain or lose dice according to any bonuses or penalties, so that's the success dice. And then you make the roll. If the roll is favoured, choose the best result on the feat dice if you're rolling 2 of them, or the worst if it's an ill-fated ones. If you roll a Gandalf, it's automatically successful. Otherwise, add up all the numerical results, get the actual action. If you're wary, all those success ones have a 1, 2, or 3, they're ignored. And then if it's successful, the number of elvish T's on your dice indicate the degrees of success. Simple, right? Absolutely not. Probably wasn't helped by someone who's incredibly warm also talking about this as well. I think when you think about it, it makes sense. And you have to go through those steps, certainly with the starter adventures, slowly but surely, especially if you're playing, as this sort of starter kit sort of claims it to be, if you're playing with younger audiences or younger audiences, younger players, or maybe brand new players as well, who really want to get into this kind of storytelling. I think building it up, and I'm not saying people are silly about it or won't know. It's just that I know through playing lots of late night games, sometimes you do not remember, and you don't really want to do out your players from or undermine their players or take something away that they could succeed at. As you saw, I didn't make any of those roles previously, so. But yeah, I think I would copy out this particular table and just give it to the players so they always have it to hand so they can easily read their dice. And here's the other thing as well, you can absolutely use normal dice. You don't have to have the fancy ones with Gandalf runes and Sauron's, etc. But here's the thing, there are certain games that have custom dice. So Vampire the Masquerade, which uses all D10s, which has different things for different numbers, successes, etc. Shiver is another one by Parable Games that has really cool custom dice on that. But I feel anything, but if you need those things to support the game, but say for example, I've only got the PDF, but I can use normal dice. I feel like if you're using normal dice and it is yet another level, so if you're like, oh, what does a 12 mean? What does an 11 mean? And I know that sounds really pernickety, but thinking of stuff like Vampire the Masquerade, I rolled so many D10s for certain things, and I'm like, okay, give me 30 seconds whilst I work out what I've got. Okay, I think I've got a success. Then I've also got 2 of these blood marks as well on a D10. What does that mean? And I think players in general, they don't like to ask things, even though, of course, they should ask. There's a lot of assumed knowledge about what they got if they're using normal dice. So, I don't know. I mean, I quite like the mechanic, but I do feel like I think what would make this accessible is to have those numbers. So every time you saw a Gandalf rune, it says 12 on that table. Every time you see an ISR on an 11, like it just has it there, so you can easily get that comparison rather than trying to work it out constantly. Maybe that's. All right, characteristics. So this is the thing we've talked about before. So yeah, the 3 attributes of the game are strength, heart, and wits. A player with a high strength score can be tough, fit, or quick to alert. Oh, quick and alert. Or physically attractive or imposing. Every aspect of an adventurer that relies on vigor or physical well-being is represented in the game. Heart, it measures a adventurer's capacity for emotion, empathy, and enthusiasm. Player hero with a high heart, fiery, energetic, and hard to daunt. Activities that benefit from a passionate or dynamic temper may be influenced by a player hero's heart score. And then finally, a high wits means a player character can be clever, attentive, and ingenious. Any action that calls for an adventurer to be sharp-witted, sensible, or wise benefits from his wits. If we go back and have a look, so yeah, all of these skills feed into sort of strength-based things. So the song's quite an interesting one. I don't know. I'm sure this one goes into detail about what the different characteristics mean. Song, which is similar to Enhearten, which is similar to Thor. There's like ones for each character. I remember, like, or some that can, I don't know, some that could be interchangeable. Yep. So we talked about those target numbers before. Except the strength's on its own, but then the heart, the target number, and we're as well as all the heart skills, making valor rolls up to resist the effects of fear. Fear is an interesting one in this. It goes into a lot of detail about it in the core rulebook. This idea of corruption and making valor rolls to resist corrupting influence. And it's really fascinating. You get, I think they're called flaws or traits, I think, negatively. And you get to a point where if you have so much, if you've been in the sort of grasp of fear, get to a point where you've got all these corruption points or whatever they're called, and then you have to retire because they are consumed in some way. Again, it doesn't really mention it in this one because everyone's being very lovely hobbits. So yeah, but if you find this interesting, the starter set one, I highly recommend it. Or rulebook even. And wits is in conjunction not only with the wit skills but also the rolls for wisdom. For example, resist the temptation of treasure. That was it. So you have the fear, which is that sort of the unnamed threat that is Sauron and the forces of darkness, but also this idea that treasure has this corrupting influence, which is obviously explored quite a lot in The Hobbit and, well, Lord of the Rings as well, all about the One Ring, but like the idea of the dwarves' greed and the dragon's greed and all that sort of thing, and how it does this effect on people. I bet there's wonderful essays all about these themes I've just completely missed because I'm not a fan of ring stuff. What else? Distinctive features. Maybe that's what it's called. Describes aspects of an adventurer's build or temper, personality traits, or physical peculiarities. These help players picture the characters to encourage deeper role playing, and invited to take into account their heroes' distinctive features throughout the game and use them as guidelines, in particular when choosing a course of action for their adventures. So that's kind of gets around the sort of thorny issue of like alignment, I guess, because if it's, it's what my character would do. Well, your character has a distinctive feature which usually says, I'm a selfish bugger. But here's the thing, you can invoke a distinctive feature to improve their chances of succeeding at a role. When you do this, you're considered to be inspired, so you get that extra d6 if you're spending hope points. So I like that. Again, if you're role-playing or you're doing something, the lore master could be like, yeah, you're really getting it. Have an extra little thing on your next roll. But yeah, reasonably plausible with someone with that quality to fare better. So yeah, you can't just be like, yeah, I'm just happy-go-lucky. That will make me better at, I don't know, singing as a role. Oh. Favoured skills. Yep, we've done all that. All good. There's a lot of repetition as well, I'd say, in this book. I guess it makes sense because it has to repeat and then you go back and make those connections and stuff. But good lord, ugh. Oh. But I'm reading this bit out because it tells you all the different ones. So strength skills in his character rely on his player hero's physical aptitude. An adventure with a high strength score is more likely to be imposing. That uses that all skill. Have a clear singing voice, song. Be fit and agile, athletics. Have good sight and hearing, awareness and hunting. Possess skillful hands, craft. They're all there. They all match up. Heart skills depend on a player hero's force of spirit. An adventurer with a high heart score can be a charismatic leader. Battle. An energetic guide, travel. A gracious gentleman, gentlewoman or gentle person, courtesy. Be able to read the hearts of others, insight. That description of insight. Or to understand their hurt and how to heal. So healing. Finally, wits. This category depends on the mental aptitude of a hero. A hero with a high wits value will quickly learn witty oratory, persuade, the arts of a burglar, stealth, show attentiveness, scan, explore, and will be clever and studious, riddle and... Right, moving on though, from skills to combat proficiencies. How well a player hero conducts themselves when engaged in battle. They're resolved in the same way as those skills rolls from before, so rolling a feat dice and the number of d6s, or success dice, sorry, equal to the rank possessed in the combat proficiency. Only rolling with a feat die 0. I mean, okay. There we go. Down here. Axes, bows, spears, and swords. Right, yeah, so you would only ever roll... I guess you're not going to be favoured at it, per se. Well, there's talents you can get that can help with that. I also can see already, and I remember this again from reading the core book, that you've got so extra lots of stuff, which again adds to the load, which then adds to the endurance and fatigue and this is circumference. That's not a current endurance, is what. But already I'm going. Oh, that's a lot of information. Let's see. Various proficiencies. 17. Endurance, hope, and parry. Back to that. Got endurance, parry. So each one's strength for endurance, heart for hope, and wits for parry. These additional stats are connected to the hero's main attributes. I just said that. Endurance and hope, strength and heart that we're connected to. The fundamental resources to keep the adventurer going. Endurance points are lost when engaged in strenuous activities. Hope points spent voluntarily by players when their player heroes try to overcome their limits. The parry score sets a target number for all attack rolls targeting the player. So essentially that is your AC, your armor class. So for Ophelia, she's got quite a high armor class. Got a parry of 18. Probably because she's got an umbrella. Exquisite, your umbrella. So going back. Okay. Oh, there is a combat chapter. I didn't miss this on. Here we go. So yeah, so this is where it goes into more detail about the different skills. The 18 skills. I do feel there's too many skills, I'll be honest, especially when quite a number of them could easily be integrated or taken out. But I guess because they want to have equal number for each of the 3 attributes. But also, if you're not good at one thing, you know, you want to be able to roll that. Say, if you want to see something, there's different skills that can cover it. I feel anything over 10 skills, sorry, even 5 skills, it just gets into the nitty-gritty of stuff. The system already has a lot to it and maybe a bit overwhelming. So the fact that, what skill do I have that could sort this out? I feel like you might be overwhelmed with choice if you're playing as a result. But then again, that's just me coming to it. Let's see. So let's take a look at some of the ones that are a bit different. Awe. Awe is this skill measures the capacity to evoke respect in onlookers and determine the impression of the player heroes make on someone they meet for the first time. It can be used to instill wonderment, admiration, or it arises from the native charisma hero, but can also be engineered by a dramatic entrance or impressive attire. It's interesting then, I would think, I guess because strength, in quotation marks, has already been described as not only as physical strength, but also sort of physical attributes as well. So maybe maybe that's justification for it. I feel like when you're awing someone, if you are, what's it saying, instilling fear and wonderment, I would think that was more fits for itself. I guess maybe because it's other people's perception of courtesy. Let's see what courtesy is. The free peoples recognize common norms of decency, ancient conventions. Observing them demonstrates respect and is a way of quickly establishing a friendly footing. Now, I remember this comes more into play when you're doing those council phases. Again, it's not necessarily covered in the starter set. It's covered in the core rule book. But basically, there's all these different phases of the story. So you have the adventuring phase, there's a council phase, there's a traveling phase, and then combat is sort of. And courtesy comes up there because you have to make a big, you choose someone to sort of introduce the party, introduce the issue that you need help with, and that's where I think. So could be important, but because there's not much in terms of like what those councils are. Oh, certainly in the rule set, maybe they come into play in these later adventures. This feels a bit odd, I guess, if you're reading this for the first. Then Hearten. Player heroes can use the enhearten skill to instill positive feelings in others, urging them to act on the matter at hand. Achieve this mainly through example, charisma, and personal conviction, rather than through effective use of awful. Be used on individuals, but it's particularly effective in influencing crowds. So again, enhearten, that comes into play mostly in those council phases as well, I seem to. An interesting one. Again, I would combine the two, enhearten and persuade, put it under one skill perhaps. Export, no, that comes with the travel stuff. That's quite important for, I think it's the scouts. That's the role, I think. Insight, usuals. Here we go. Lore. Lore expresses a love for learning, be it fascination with descriptions of distant lands or an interest in family genealogy. Whenever an action involves knowledge of some kind, a lore test is. Player heroes are considered to be knowledgeable in the traditions of their own people, so the lore master should rarely require a player to make a roll for information regarding. Okay, that's good to know. But here's the one at the bottom, riddle, because I thought these were similar, but actually I don't think they are now. Owing its name to the ancient game, the riddle skill represents the ability to draw conclusions from seemingly unconnected scraps of information by deduction, reasoning, and intuition. Adventurers also rely on riddle when they are forced to talk their way out of a subject, prefer to conceal a part of what they know, for example, to tell something about themselves without revealing their identity. As an accepted custom amongst many cultures, speaking in riddles is usually allowed amongst strangers meeting for the first time and wanting to speak guardedly. This skill is also useful for gaining insight into a spoken or written riddle. Physical riddles as well. Actual riddles. So you can understand why I sort of mix those two up a little bit. The lore, learning, but then you're trying to get conclusions from what you've learnt. So it's like almost you do a lore and then a riddle test, perhaps, if you've got bits of information from all over. But yeah, riddle mostly I feel like will be to deceive someone, to speak in riddles, which obviously is very Tolkien. Scan when examining something closely or attentively. So it's more investigation. This skill allows a player hero to skim through a book to locate a piece of relevant information, look for concealed doors or hidden inscriptions, recognize a familiar face in a crowd, or locate a set of tracks on the ground. Alright, for me, those are so many different examples of the word scan. Definitely feels like a perception. Like, again, look, discover. Interesting on that last line there. So awareness rather than scan is used to see if a hero passively noticed something. So I guess because I used that as my example, didn't I? I used awareness. I'm slightly better in scan. Well, not better. I'm favoured in scan, even though that's if I rolled a scan now. Ooh, yes. Got a 10 and a 2, so that's a 12. I just hit that target number value. So realistically, I should be. Yeah, both hearts and wits are Lobelia's better target numbers. So I should be using those skills rather than anything to do with strength. Back to the road. Let's see. Song. The song skill is used to recite poems, sing songs, or play instruments suitable to the character's culture. It can also be used to learn new works or create original. Travel. That's the main one for the. A roll of travel may let a player hero estimate the length of a journey, read a map, or evaluate when a stranger on the road can be. That's just a quick look at those different skills there. Again, some of them, as I said, it's like they can combine it, but I guess certainly if you've got 3 attributes that indicate sort of target numbers, and if you've got less skills on one of them, but it's a lower target number, then you might feel a bit put out. So you're less likely to get that attribute. if that makes sense. Okay, combat proficiency. So the sheet here, 4 different ones: axes, bows, spears, and swords. I am not going to go into so much detail because I hope people know the difference between axes, swords, bows, and spears. In the actual book, it goes into a lot of detail about what each axe looks like, or what they all can do and stuff, which is fine. But just that's the thing. I'll be honest, I'm really bad at combat, and I think certainly in this one, when it's very clear to me that you shouldn't get into combat, all the information about it. But I know some people really like it. But brawling attacks, that's a box. Brawling attacks. Adventurers who must leave behind their trusted weapons may find themselves forced to fight unarmed or rely on a simple dagger or even a thrown stone. When this happens, they rely on their martial training, so performing an attack unarmed uses a roll of dice equal to their highest combat proficiency, but lose 1d6. So if Lobelia was fighting, so she would, her best thing is in swords, so she'd lose 1d6 and then just. Unarmed attacks have a damage rating of 1 and cannot cause a pierce. Special condition on fire. And that's it. Look, that's all you get in combat proficiencies. Nothing else. Your combat's not important. Endurance and hope is what keep the player heroes on the road, providing them with reserves of energy and the additional momentum that sometimes is the only chance a hero has to prevail. Shown on their character sheets, and while the current endurance and hope boxes are used to keep any changes during play. Alternatively, you can track them using different coloured counters, glass, speed, dice. Just do it here. Just put it there. Easy enough. Max. Endurance. Endurance represents a hero's resistance and is taken into account whenever a hero, or an adventurer, is subjected to some form of harm. In particular, player heroes lose endurance during combat when they suffer physical damage from any other source or as a consequence of any strenuous task requiring great effort. So realistically, if you want to put it in basic terms, endurance can be seen as sort of hit points. So Lobelia's not too bad. She's got 22 max hit points, max endurance. And here we go. You drop to 0 endurance. You are unconscious and wake up after an hour with 1 endurance unless they're wounded. In conjunction with the load, so box here. Endurance determines the weight and bulk of any equipment that starts to affect a player's performance. So you become wary, so you tick that condition box. Wary if your current endurance equals to or is under the load endurance. You're being weighed down by all equipment. And they will remain wary until their endurance score goes above it. That's straightforward enough. It's interesting because for me, I don't really care too much about endurance or encumbrance. But obviously here it makes a big difference. And I definitely understand why that is, especially if you're traveling. Great plans. Actually, I don't think I showed it, but and you probably won't see it knowing it is. Actually, I'll turn back to my main camera quickly. So in the big book, first page, you get the big map of Middle Earth. Then on the back page, you get a cool map with. I'm going to put it close to the camera because you can see the sort of the hexes. Basically, it's like a hex crawl in that sense. You would map out where you're going. Obviously, you get bigger maps for your players and stuff, and you can see what the different types of lands are. There's all the sort of thing about making marches tests, calculating travel fatigue, all that sort of thing, and using the map and the different terrain to just be like, well, if you could take longer to get there, or you can make this shortcut. But it's very steep, and there's a mountain in the way, so actually maybe you shouldn't do that, etc. Yeah, so there's a little bit more to it than just being like drawing map. It actually feels a bit more with it, I guess. I don't know. Not making too much sense tonight. I'm going to blame the heat. Cool. Where were we? Resting. Hooray. We regain endurance points by resting. Depends on if you're taking a short rest or a long rest. Oh, a prolonged rest. That's the D&D coming out of me. Prolonged rest. It will depend on how many you can. Short rest. A day's adventuring allows for one short rest, usually in the middle of the day. Because it has to correspond to at least 1 hour of inactivity. With short rests, players can recover a number of lost endurance points equal to their strength. But wounded characters do not recover any strength. If I was strength, is it the strength modifier? Right. I assume your strength. Presumably it's the modifier. So if I was down, I don't know, 15, I could go up to 2 perhaps. See what the prolonged one says. Prolonged rest. Under normal circumstances, the group of player heroes is allowed to take a single prolonged rest each day, usually a night's sleep. Recover all lost endurance points. There you go. So that makes sense. That you can recover up to 22 here, but if you take a short rest, you can only recover. Okay, endurance is fairly straightforward on that front in terms of resting. Hope. A hero's spiritual reserve of fortitude and positivity. A hopeful character can keep going when physically stronger characters have succumbed to despair. Replay, spend hope, gain a hope bonus on any roll, or trigger the effects of certain cultural virtues. That's something that comes up in character creation, which is not covered. We'll find out. We've still got 8 pages. Players whose hope score has reduced to 0 are spiritually drained. It's impossible for them to find the energy to push themselves beyond their limits. What does that mean? Is that mean they can't push the roll again? Are they just did they lose stuff? Hopefully it'll come up and say on the next page, but I know it won't probably. Recovering hope. Recovering hope points indicate the player's heroes are reaffirming the lost sense of confidence. You gain a single point of hope once they take a prolonged rest. It takes longer to regain that sort of self-esteem. And then all player heroes recover a number of hope points equal to their heart score between adventures. Okay, so Labili would gain 6 between sort of big adventures, and her hope score is 6. Okay. So it's interesting. So you physically heal faster than spiritually, which again feels very Tolkien, right? Like think at the end of the Lord of the Rings where Frodo's like, I feel better, but I feel drained, and then goes. Right, valor and wisdom. So that is. Oh, they're here. Valor, wisdom, virtue. That's the cultural virtue there underneath as mastery. Okay, that's a. The heroic stature of an adventurer can be measured in 2 different ways: wisdom and valor. Wisdom represents heroes' trust in their own capabilities, their self-confidence, and a capacity for good judgment. Valor is a measure of a hero's courage, tempered by dangerous deeds. Individuals of valor are willing to place themselves in danger for the sake. A lore master may require player heroes to make rolls testing their wisdom. When this happens, such rolls are resolved as usual, rolling 1 feat die and the number of successes equal to the appropriate rating in the challenged ability. Difficulty to heart. So, I'm guessing I roll my feat die. I was doing a valor check. Feat die and single 6. against 12. And the same here, I assume. Rewards. Rewards represent characteristics of such high quality weapons and defensive gear, priceless instruments of war given to heroes by their own folk or family, or by generous lords honouring them by letting them choose a weapon or suit of armour from their personal armoury. Rewards earned by pre-generated heroes of it. Okay, so again, it talks about this a little bit more in the core. Not going into too much. Makes sense. Virtues are special abilities that complement hero's arsenal of skills and combat proficiency, describing aptitudes that come naturally to an adventure or rise through time and practice. Again, fully explained on there. Yeah, there's more to it in the book. Opelia's got masteries. Favoured skills have already been counted. Good to know. Useful items. Any tool, instrument, or device carried by a player hero or one or more specific is a useful item. Things like a hammer or a hunting knife or flint or steel, art of fire and so. Useful items are listed on a player hero's character sheet. To determine if they gain a hero an advantage, they're associated with a. Yeah, they only sort of gain a D. That's. I presume that is the best die. Unless, well, I don't know. It doesn't really. Oh, but we'll never know. Adventuring! Huzzah! Here we go. So, 5 ready-to-play scenarios are presented in the adventures. But created expressly for this. They are potentially playable using the full rules of the One Ring, but they've been written specifically with the participation of the pre-generated characters in mind. This notwithstanding, the guidelines present. So yeah, basically, there's no point in creating your own characters for this. Better just to use the pre-generated ones, which again makes sense because they're all hobbits. I think. Sorry, I now have to look. Yes. Oh, sorry, not Dwarlen. Barlin. I actually think you play 8 characters. Bilbo's one of them, as is Barlin. I think you unlock those characters later. Or play the other characters, the other cousins of Bilbo's Baggins. And Baggins is like I'm Gollum. Talks again how an adventure works. Again, talked about it at the beginning of the session. You create the scenes. You go into more roleplay. Excuse me. Introduction to the adventure. So setting who, what, where, why. That's a very important thing actually with the adventure stuff. Is like, why should the characters care? Yeah, why should they play as well? Like, so often you hear stories on Reddit or people going, oh, well, I created this whole campaign and my players aren't interested and don't care. And it's like, did you ask the players if they wanted to play in that story? Are they interested in a big heist or saving people from towers, etc.? Or are they more interested in discovering their characters? You need to have these conversations with folks during character creation. If you've got the pre-generated ones, it's a little bit easier because that is sort of more fixed. You sort of get them on that. A lot easier. Scenes and an end of the session. So when a session ends, there's 2 situations. End without reaching a satisfactory conclusion, it was resumed at a later session. And on the contrary, if a current narrative arc has reached its conclusion, you draw the final curtain on the game section. Adventure is over, time to plan. Again, in the full book, there's this talk of downtime and having like seasons and festivals, like what your players are doing in between adventuring, which is quite interesting actually. I quite like it as both a role-play thing and as a way to level stuff. So I was wrong. There is a section on combat. Well, forgot. Combat is a sad but unavoidable culmination of a scene. Should a fight erupt, the lore master and players must follow rules presented in the section to make a fight momentous. Okay, here we go, because I know I have to pull myself in for this one. So when you start, if you're separated by distance at the start of the fight, you're allowed to make something called opening volleys, which is sort of ranged attacks before people rush in and do the close combat. The lore master must determine how many volleys allow based on the distance between the fighters. under most circumstances, all combats are entitled to at least one volley using a bow or a thrown weapon. If the distance is greater, you might. They're resolved as normal ranged attacks. Next page. Or not. I'm guessing it's going to be this attack roll. So yeah, so that's... When they are completed, the combats cover the distance that separates them and begins fighting at close quarters. So again, you split up this fight, opening volley, then close quarters. So close quarters. Each of the players, so those little each round sets out the following sequence. You choose a stance, one of the 4 stances, and sort of set them down, saying, okay, I'm going to use an open stance. And it says underneath here, no advantage or disadvantage, it's close combat, combat task, rally combat. Special thing you can do in that stance. Yeah, these are called 4 stances. Engagement, all combatants in close quarters are paired with another opponent, another opponent or many opponents. You attack roll resolutions, so those who are standing in close combat fight first. The rules for fighting and travelling allow the players... hang on, sorry, misread that first sentence. There's a set of stance cards. These are meant to be used with the One Ring's core rulebook. The full rules for fighting and travelling allow the players to choose a more specific stance during battles and to assign a role to each player hero during a journey. Players wishing to use the stance cards can still do so, knowing that forward, open, and defensive are all combat stances, and that rearward, range combat. And it sort of describes them all on there as well. Once you pick your stance, you can choose freely to fight in close combat, and range combat if there's at least another 2 adventurers fighting in close combat. Got to choose beginning of each round. Choose 1 or more components to engage. Roll and engage. Player heroes without an adversary must join another player hero. So yeah, you can team up with people. You can't not fight someone. That is the rule. I guess. Player heroes fighting in range combat can't engage in close combat. They attack enemies, range weapons. So you have to be like, no, I'm in range combat. I'm in rearward stance. Aren't coming up. Right, here we go. The attack roll. Unless differently specified, all the attacks of combatants are resolved using player heroes going first. Easy enough. You don't have to draw for initiative or roll for it. Player heroes always go first. When they've resolved all their attacks, then I will resolve all the... the Lore Master will resolve all the adversaries. Close combats are resolved first, and then the range attack. So it makes sense. You first do the range, everyone runs in, then it's close combat, and so then when you're doing each round, close combat, and then there's people outside of range. Well, an attack roll is a die using the combat proficiency corresponding to the weapons used. These ones back here. It's based on their strength, target number, modified by the parry rating of their target. Okay. So, what that means... Sometimes these things are really worded weirdly. Modified by the parry. So, in order to hit, if I was going to hit with Lobelia, right? Say I was going to get out my sword, which technically, let's say, is the umbrella. I get out the sword and start hitting something. I have to roll a feat die and 2 d6s, or 2 success die. And I have to get over... Ooh, that was a good roll from Fiona. I have to get over 16, my target number, to at least hit. So I've rolled a 9 on the feat dice, and then 3, and then a 6. So that is in total, Fiona... Oh, good. That is 18 total. And with that sort of little elvish figure on the 6 as well, that's a good success. So that degrees of success. But modified by the parry. So I guess I think parry does change quite a bit as well. Like it changes. I know from depending on the equipment. I mean, I think I still hit because I rolled an 18. If I, for example, if the person I was fighting also had a parry of 18, then I would have hit it. I think that's how it works. The difficulty of attacks. Wait, the difficulty of all the attacks was modified by the rating of the target. I actually think the ratings are going to. Let me have a look. Or I could just look in book at an adversary. Words. There we go. Ah, so I see. Like looking at the example of an orc, their parry is a +3. I see. So, okay. So you'd add that +3 to your target number. You'd have to. So I'd have to, if I was up against a great orc, I'd miss. Even though I got an 18, their thing would be. But that makes sense. Okay. So it's always like a small modifier to that target number. Then the difficulty of all attacks rolled against adversaries against player heroes equal to the target hero's parry score instead. So yeah, so to hit a Lobelia, I have to roll. The Lawmaster would have to roll an 18, depending on that creature. Let's. Orcs. In their heavy simmer. Did get a Gandalf rune, so yeah, they easily hit. Good to know. All right, let's see then what else. Cool. A successful attack if in damage is in the form of endurance loss based on the weapon. And special damage might occur depending on the degrees of success. Finally, attacks may cause long-lasting injuries. So that's where that endurance comes in as well. So not only are you weary from like maybe traveling and stuff, but on top of that, you know, if you're losing stuff, you might have to like you get tired in combat as well. It's a real danger, this weary condition. For ease, I can tell the adversaries don't become weary, but they're eliminated on reaching 0 endurance, where there's a bit more toing and froing for those player heroes. Special damage. So I did roll a 6 in that. Go. Ah. So an attack roll. Oh, hey Dan, how are you doing? You can tell I'm just talking to myself about the One Ring starter set. We're on to damage. Very exciting. So an successful attack roll produces one or more success icons. Yada yada yada. So yeah, with the success on those things, work really well. Annoyingly for swords, though, you have to roll at least 2 or more successes to really hit piercing blow, that's the damaging one from. Again, lots of stuff to think about on top of it. So, but it gives all that sort of admin towards the. That is useful for master. At piercing blows. In addition to causing the loss of endurance, those hit points, if so this is that sort of critical hit injury. And an attack. Oh, I did roll a Gandalf rune earlier as well. Ooh, an attack roll that will produce a piercing blow on a 10 or a Gandalf rune. So yeah, you know, a Gandalf. Just have to. I mean, 10 is, I guess, 10 and Gandalf, the nice ones. Yes. Characters hit by piercing blow must immediately roll 1 feet plus a number of dice equal protection value of the armor protection test. Now I know I have any. She's a that's where you'd see it there. The helm or the armor. That's where the protection. Incredibly unlikely. The target number for the roll is equal to the injury rating of the weapon used. Piercing blow. Right, so in order for me, I need to roll that, but the target number for the roll. Right. Oh, I see. Right. So the protection value, that determines my dice pool as a player. The target number that I have to make is the injury rating of the weapon. Whatever the weapon is. If I went back to that orc example, right at the back, but I think is all. Head. Yeah. There we go. So, ooh. Yeah, if they were using their heavy scimitar in 18, so I would have to roll equal to the 18 of that weapon. If I fail, the Beardy would get a threatening blow. Wounds. Most adversaries are killed outright when wounded, unless specified differently in their. Player heroes, on the other hand, can resist being wounded once without serious consequences. Risk more if in a second. If they're wounded, they check the wounded box on their character sheet. Next to wearing. Very good. As seen under endurance on page 18, player heroes who are wounded check with the wounded box checked recover endurance more slowly. Back to page 18. Here we go. Wounded heroes recover a number of points. And wounded, yeah. So yeah, on a short rest, wounded heroes don't heal anything at all because it's only an hour. Then, compared to a prolonged rest, for all your hit points overnight, you recover at equal. Yeah, unfortunately, you recovered. So no, all right, back we go. That's wounds. Yep, done that. If they're wounded for a second time, i.e., receive a wound when their wounded box is already checked, see that their endurance is dropped to and they fall unconscious. The second wound is not recorded. They recover from their injuries between adventures or in 1 week. They're allowed to reduce the severity of the wound with a healing roll. Successful healing roll reduces time. Recovery by 1 day plus each day for each success elvish item. You can only administer a successful healing roll only once, which does make sense. You can't be repeated until a day has passed. And then in the lovely red box, serious injuries and death. Rules about serious injuries serious injuries, as detailed in the stat set, are meant to evoke a mood that is more appropriate to stories as those presented in adventures, i.e. The Hobbit. Adventuring the Shire is meant to be exciting, maybe thrilling, but never life-threatening. Hobbit adventurers and their like are meant to return home with an exciting tale to tell. Many relations, not to be mourned after their demise. Oh, but what if? Or unnamed threat comes to the show. Yeah, so they don't really include it in the starter set, and again, because they've already outlined at the beginning that it is meant for a younger audience. maybe getting people who are just getting into the role. And so it's definitely a different vibe. It's definitely more Hobbit than Lord of the Rings. What I do find interesting is that in the actual core book, it talks about having a company made up of different, dwarves, elves, hobbits, and men. There can be any sort of career class or anything like that, and it doesn't matter. Everyone has a space, everyone has chance, but the wilderness and the wildness of Middle Earth itself, and those corruptions coming in with both the sort of the fear tests and also the treasure erupting in as well. That's the more darker side that it wants to explore, as well as horrible combat. So, I feel like it's maybe aimed at two different people. Like, if you're doing the starter set one, that might be lovely. I can imagine someone go, oh yeah, I'd love to play a full campaign of this. And then you go and goes, oh god, this is fine. This is all fine. Oh, no worries, Dan. That's all right. You just get to hear me mumble about Lord of the Rings and how I don't know anything about it. I hope your dishes are doing all right. Other actions than attacks. Players may propose to do something different from an attack roll, something unusual or unexpected. That is a very typical player to do. They would do. You give them a character sheet full of 18 skills, give them weapons and stuff, and you go, what do you want to do? And they'll do something that is not listed or anything. In brackets, it says, this is usually a sign that they're enjoying the game, and the lore master should encourage it wherever possible. Oh, no. I don't think so. Factors to consider when resolving actions other than attack rolls are time, difficulty, and consequence. Can you perform the action in one round, or will it take more time? The lore master must decide, but usually such cases consider a round to last to a maximum of 30 seconds. So a little bit more prolonged than perhaps the 6 seconds would. Does the action require a dice roll? If so, successful player must have clear consequences. Generally, if succeeding on an action will grant advantage to the player heroes, failure should cause a disadvantage. Yeah, that makes sense. Talking with the enemy. Now, this is always an interesting one. I can imagine that you go through a couple of rounds of like not getting very far, hitting various creatures that have got way too much armor, and someone goes, "Wait, let's just talk it out." There's been some rules about it. Oh, what game was it? There was one which was, it had it in order. Like, you would go in the order of the action you chose. Oh, RPG was it? The first order was like you would always. Oh, it was the Land of Eam. It was called. Great one. I interviewed the designers behind it. They created a comic book basically on their D&D adventures, and then they're like, we enjoy it so much, we enjoy the setting, let's make our own RPG about it, which has been funded on Kickstarter, and it should be coming out, like the full version of it's coming out, I think next month. I did get the proof of it, and it was really good. Really good art. Anyway, the whole point of their initiative is that you do those people who want to talk first, they always go first in the round. You then have people who want to do something that's not combat, but it is an action. So maybe they're looking around the environment to do something. So maybe there's like barrels or whatever, and they're going to maneuver behind them, perhaps to hide. You then have fleeing. It's the people that go third in the round. And then right at the end, it's the people that attack. And as soon as somebody attacks a creature, those other three sort of become less important, or it's harder to do stuff. You can always still attempt to talk. Remember that game, but it becomes increasingly difficult. I always think of that as an interesting way of doing initiative, like who wants to talk to the creature first, rather than like, let's attack it. Oh, it's not working. Quick, let's talk to it. I don't know about you, but I would not want to talk to somebody if they kept attacking me. But yeah, what does it say? Talking with the enemy. Often the company faces creatures capable of speech. Orcs, the most intelligent amongst trolls, speak a debased version of the. And dragons can outwit in conversation. And dragons can outwit in conversation the smartest adventurer. Man, I'm clearly not very smart if I can't read a sentence like that. This means that violence need not be the only way to. Some good role playing and clever thinking might allow player heroes to find a way out of a dangerous situation. For example, tricking an excessively powerful enemy into thinking that the heroes are much stronger than they actually are, or by outright deceit. Think Gandalf tricking the stone trolls, or Bilbo challenging Gollum at the riddle game, and entertaining Smaug with a clever conversation. But a wicked Lord Master must remember that the opposite is also possible. A cunning adversary might find a way to trick the player heroes and lure them into a trap, or put them at a disadvantageous position by only using words. It's assuming that I am clever enough to do that. Most of the time when I'm portraying like a big bad, I'm sort of like, God, Fiona's sounding really clever and stuff, and in my head I'm just going, fuck, oh God, oh God, don't probe too quick, don't probe too much. It reminds me of I recently ran a game of Alien. I think I might have spoken about it last time at UK Games Expo, and I realised I was running the final of this tournament at quite a number. I think out of the 5 people, all of them had played Alien before. Obviously, all knew the rules, and only one of them had actually only one of them hadn't played the scenario that I had planned. Everyone else had played it. And I only found this out through the conversations as they're talking about each other, because they all knew each other randomly. Weird, role players in those communities just really know, because maybe they just played all the games, etc. So I had a massive panic, because I was like, oh, what do I do? They know there's going to be an alien that turns. If I do anything, they'll know what it is. And I've not had that before. I've had it in D&D, but I've never had it in a different RPG. So I sort of made them make characters, and I went away for 10 minutes, and I was just sort of I was in the bathroom going, oh God, what do I do? What do I do? And I was like, okay, you're an improviser. Just what scares you the most? And the answer is children. so, so I went back and I completely improvised the final based on this idea of scary children and a maternity ward. And let me tell you, if you looked at it too closely, the story did not make any sense. I was basically playing off what the players were giving me, their reactions around the table. And then when I told them that if they looked above like the room they were in, there was like a thing on the wall and it said maternity ward, they all were like, nope, no thank you, this sounds bloody dreadful. What made me laugh about that was that in the break I went away to sort of calm down a little bit, because I was like, oh, I'm being a bit obvious. I came back and they were all talking about their own stories about being their partners being in maternity wards, right? Because all the players at the table were older white cis men, and it was really funny because they turned out none of them had ever been into a maternity ward. So they're like, I mean, we don't know what could be in there. I mean, what the game mother is telling us, that could actually be a thing. I was like, okay, good. Fooled them for now. And oh, that seems to be it. There you go. That is the end of this quick start guide. We've done the combat. Ah, brilliant. Gosh. All right. Well, what have we learnt? I think overall, looking at this quick start, it's enough to get you going. Obviously, it is paired with the adventure booklet, which has these 5 adventures where you play characters that are hobbits that are related to Bilbo in some way. And the first one, the first adventure that I played, he gets you to break into some museum to borrow something. And basically the whole thing is you journeying across the bit and get across the Brandywine River. It was very much though when I played it. It was very much very improv heavy. The dice didn't matter too much, but it was fun. I think the one thing I'd get out of this is that mechanic I really like. I love rolling d12s. I love rolling d6s. Putting them together is really good. But I feel like some of the stuff can be overwhelming. This idea of ill-favored versus favored, so advantage disadvantage for the d12s. Yeah, danger room. Do not avoid. Do not enter. But having favored and ill-favored for your d12s, and then the bonus and penalty die for the d6s, the success die, and then having hope to spend on the d6, this, that, and the other. It makes sense if you're playing in person. I feel like the One Ring isn't a game. I think it's just difficult to play any game that has more than 2 or 3 dice mechanics that vary but feel very similar on stream. Just because me as a player, unless I know the system very well, and then you forget to say it. That's the one thing I really hate about watching actual plays. That they never say what they're rolling, or they assume like, oh, it's this and this. That's why I always like, okay, so I'm rolling d12s because I'm favoured and this, that, and the other. And I know that maybe breaks immersion a little bit, but a lot of the time people are watching these actual plays not only for the story and stuff, but probably to play it themselves and see what they get right and stuff. So I like the dice mechanic. It's not as gritty and not as sort of heavy as Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay that me and Hamilton actually had a couple of weeks ago. Hamilton really, really, really liked that one. I'm still on the fence about it. Every time I think about it, I just think about all the optional rules that it suggested. But the main mechanic was quite fun. I think the setting, and I think the thing I really loved about this particular starter set, well, mostly the core rules, it doesn't really say it's in this one. Because that's the thing, there's no starter set. You have these separate books like the rules, the adventures, the Shire. There isn't like a general sort of essay to the lore master going, hey, it's okay. You have the very basic, like I said, the example of play, how you run a session, the different things. In the core rulebook, like I said earlier, it talks about this idea of what is canon and not to worry about it, because maybe people are worried, certainly when you're running Lord of the Rings theme. If it doesn't fit in with the story as the books told it, then you're worrying if you're going on people's time. So I think that I would definitely recommend checking out the core rulebook for stuff, but I will say the one that you probably use as an improvised weapon had the chat. It does have some writing in it. But yeah, I think overall thoughts, I would get starter set and I'd use it as an in-person thing. As a PDF, well, I think this is the thing with you get all these extra things like the character sheets, you get cool little coasters of the stances for combat, which doesn't really go into too much detail. She has a good point. So go back to the. There you go, the stances. So on the actual card itself, it talks about. Yeah, that's so true. It doesn't say in what order you would resolve the stances. I seem to remember that you do it from. You've got three stances that are. You've got forward, you've got defensive, you've got open, and then you've got rearward. And rearward always goes last because that is the ranged attack one. I'm gonna read it out. I'm gonna be boring. Oh, change camera. And how many rings on a jeweler's hand? Give it. One ring to rule them all, Dan. Have you not been paying attention? That's the whole point of it. But let's see. So forward. Your attack rolls gain 1 d6, so that's a success die on that. All close combat rolls aimed at you gain a d6 as well. So it's because you're at the front. And you have a thing called combat task intimidate foes. So that's an additional thing you can do on your turn because you're in that stance. Doesn't explain what it is though in the starter set at all. I think next is open. Because they're in a certain order. There's actually a picture in the main book that shows you it. Oh, I think somebody drew it online though when I was looking at it. Open, so no advantage or disadvantage. You're just there, but you're engaged with those enemies. Then combat task, rally comrades in brackets and hearten. So yeah, you sort of like, I don't know, shout to them. Because this is the thing, these tasks, if you roll well enough, everyone gains benefits for it. You think would be useful for your company. Defensive, all close combat rolls aimed at you lose a d6, and your combat rolls lose a d6 against the opponent engaging you. So yeah, so the fact you can switch between these stances every turn, and you can really depend on it. It feels very much like a Darkest Dungeon in a way. And then rearward, for each player hero in rearward, there must be at least 2 other adventurers in close combat stances, and enemies can't outnumber the adventurers more than 2 to 1. So yes, I can imagine if the people start to dwindle, your adversaries start to dwindle closer to. Can only attack with or be targeted by ranged weapons. Combat task, prepare shot, which is a scan attack. Oh, no. You said your final force, so I was trying to be more inventive of what your final score was. Oh. Well, yeah. I don't know. I definitely would run it. Hang on, go back to the game screen. Whoop. I think I would run it. I don't know if I would do it on stream. Definitely run it for friends. There's a lot of chance for it to be role play. People, especially people, love being hobbits. Found. Like I don't know if I would do a full campaign of it. Like I said, there's other factors to it. Not only is like the adventuring phase, which is all the role play bits. You also have the traveling phase, the journey phase, and then the council phase where you go and lead your case to various people to get their help, and then combat on top of it. And they're all different rules for stuff, and it's interesting from a game design standpoint. But I don't know if it's interesting to watch. So I think if I was gonna put rings on people's hands. You have half rings? Is that a thing I can do? I could. I think a solid 3 out of 5. You get one on the pointer finger, one probably on the index. That is still the pointer finger. Middle finger, and then a pinky finger. How's that? I don't know now. You were listening, Dan. Thank you very much. But that's it for now. I'm gonna go get a break. 'Cause I've been talking for 2 hours. Nobody wants to hear that. Not even you, Dan. Bless you. But yeah, thank you so much for listening to my garbledness about One Ring. If you're interested, I highly recommend checking it out on the Free League website, or you could. Yeah, because I'm not sponsored by them. I'd recommend, if I was recommending other RPGs similar to the One Ring, but less, I don't know, less Lord of the Ringsy. I always recommend it, but Quest by Adventure Guild. They are a great company that roll. Hang on, back to normal cam. It's a great one to introduce to new audiences and to younger audiences as well. If this art set is aimed at younger audiences, I'd also recommend Quest because that is very straightforward. There's a lot of customization in the different archetypes, which are very straightforward. They've got adventure skill branches. No, skill trees. That's the word. I mean trees. And you roll a d20, and basically anything over 6 succeeds. For combat, everyone has 10 hit points. Fists, hitting with your fist, 1 damage. Sword is 2 damage, and that's it. It just makes things so much easier from that front. But it's very you can put it in any system, but high fantasy, that would work really well. But more importantly, the PDF is free. They made a big decision, I think last year, to be like, we've made so much money on this system. We use it. It's used as the basis for quite a lot of other systems as well. So, would highly recommend checking that out. They do have a sci-fi setting out. Oh. Yeah, check out Quest as well. But yeah, that's it for this evening. I might be back and do other ones, depends if it gets again. But I will leave you to it. Enjoy your dishes, Dan. And I'll probably see you on your stream a little bit later as well. Thank you so much, and I'll see you.